Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and others. This will be episode 1 in my overview of my world, Vivventia. We will be covering the lore of this world in order to present a better understanding of it. Today we'll be just going over the general information. Most of the people that at least know that why this is being made, have access to the actual lore document, but this is more just to, give a broader understanding. Um, we're going to start with how dates are given. We're going to, there is two dates that you are likely going to see, and that is BHW and PHW. Um, there is a large war that is a massive part of this world. It is called the Great Hacked War. This war was so devastating and so important to the lore that the inhabitants of the world largely, at least for the Alphabetcha region, largely changed how they wrote dates down in order to match with the Great Hacked War. BHW stands for Before the Great Hacked War, so beef, which would be, the years leading up to the Great Hacked War from the 7,000s BHW to the 20, depending on what part of the lore you're at, and then the PHW stands for Post Hacked War, meaning it is either during or after the Great Hacked War. And it is from 1 PHW, so the first year the war was in, to 15 when the PHW when the war ended, and beyond. There are, in this world, 60 seconds in a minute, 60 minutes in an hour, 30 hours in a day exactly. Then there's 10 days in a week, 3 weeks in a month, 30 day, or sorry, yeah, 30 day, meaning there's only exactly 30 days per month. There's 12 months per year, which means exactly 360 days. There's 12 months with custom names. Star rise, indicating when the stars begin to, or when the constellation cycle begins to rise again in the sky as it begins again. False spring, for the fact that it starts to get a little bit warm, being a false spring. A false winter, when winter is over, but you still there's usually just like a week or so of just snow that comes back. Shalful, which it's because this is the month when the it largely begins to rain and shower across much of the world. Then Bloss, for the blossoming of the flowers that largely takes place during this month. Then Bruna, for the temperature that's beginning to increase. Then Inferna, for when the temperature reaches highest. Then Koli, for when the air begins to cool. Hrasven, for when the harvest is upon them. Spokana, because no matter what world, every world must have a spooky month. Then there's Starfall, for when the stars begin to dim. And Sky Seep, because the last month of the year has the dimmest stars and darkest skies. Besides when the moons are up, because there are 3 moons. We'll get to that later, though. The 10 days of the week are Damozun, which just means, day of the moon 1. Then Daimigo, Dugwa, Dao, Gahe, Da, which just means day. Da just means day. Damozuna, which just means day of the moon 2. Dahlia, Dadali, Dakela, Deragan, and Damuzan. Damozunan, which just means day of the moon 3. The reason talks about the three moons is because the reason there are three moon days is because, as I said a couple seconds ago, there's three moons. The moons in English, because I haven't found a way to name them in the actual setting yet, are greater, being a large moon, which is the closest and largest of the moons. It's about the same color as Mars is. Second, which is gray like our own moon. It's the second furthest and the middle sized. And then lesser, which is a bluish moon. It's also the smallest and the furthest. There are no other planets in the solar system. It is just the planet of Vivventia, which is where the entire story takes place, and it's mostly Earth-like, at least in temperatures and stuff like that. Obviously, some things are quite different. Anyway, then we're going to move on to the timeline. On the 7th of Koli, 7,266 years before the Great Hect War, the first people arrive they appear on the island of Agaide. These are technically humans, or at least they're supposed to be humans, but they were directly created to just live here. They, in the modern day, celebrate a holiday about being, appearing. They just don't really understand the backstory of that holiday. And then 4,603 BHW, species first appeared on a continent known as the Old World, or the Home World. It is not a planet; it is a continent. It's just called that because many or all have left that behind. And then on these, there's no exact date for this. It's the fact the other ones have dates are just because it's those groups of people are just that precise. Then on the 6th of Star Rise, 3,128 years before the Hacked War, Agaide is unified under the ERA, which stands for either, in English, Educate, Research, Archive, or the Eldrin Research Association. Now, it would not be that second name until, PHW times. That's a couple, 1,000 years ahead. So, currently, it's just Educate, Research, Archive. Then in 3,109 BHW, the Obsidian Isle is found by human explorers, and this island is a very volcanic island, but it's incredibly fertile. It is largely considered to be the second homeland of humanity. And then in 2,920 BHW, the first species are kind of evolve on the continent of Helvetia, which is just they are actively showing up here. They specifically the Genasi species, which are just elementals given a humanoid-ish form, and then the draconic species descended from the greater dragons, which are just dragons but intelligent, leading to things like the dragonborn, kobolds, and, their subspecies, the other dragonborn subspecies. In 2,690 BHW, humans began a mass exodus from the Obsidian Isle as it experienced a massive wave of volcanic eruptions. By the time of, about the 2680s, there are no humans left on these islands, as they begin to spread across the world to the areas like Stenamos, Armegia, Palaxia, Leonoria, and Nemina, along with an area that I have yet to name. So far, it's just called the Eight Islands. That will probably just remain its name, though. In 2,674 BHW, the first non-native species arrive to Alphabetcha. These would be elves, being made up of the greater elf species, and the humans, who arrived a little bit before, but were struggling a lot more. And then in 2187, a deity known as Lorai sinks the old world. Now, this is important because with that sinking, the greater elves begin to rapidly die off, and they're a little worried about that, and so they conduct a ritual that heightens their evolution, hoping that they create new species that aren't affected by this connection to what they had with the old world, and that succeeds, but it also kind of affects other species to cause things like the human subspecies, the other elven subspecies, and various others. And then in 2565, the first greater dragon is killed. Before then, it was mostly kind of thought to be impossible to kill a greater dragon, but this is when it had been done. Though, and then they would continue to be hunted for the next 400 years ish. Until our next event, which caused, or until there was only one left. The aspect of the volcanoes, but we will get into aspects later. In 2137 BHW, the Dark Age of Magic begins. No one's really sure how this happened, but what they do know is that this was when magic users began to stop being trusted, and they began to, be more, and they began to be hunted down, though that didn't really come into full swing until 2134 BHW, the Purge of Magics, when both individuals, small groups, and nations began to hunt down magic users and burn the knowledge that they had collected. This event was worldwide, though the many causes across the world are various and many. And it wouldn't be until thousands of years later. Sorry for the crinkling. It wouldn't be until thousands of years later that the majority of the effects of the Dark Age would be undone. In 2208 BHW, the Empire of Vertalia was founded. Now, I'm mentioning this specific empire because of its leader, who is another aspect, of course. Like I said, we'll get into that later. In 1964, the many nations of the globe officially declared after having not seen a greater dragon in 200 years, besides the aspect, they all mostly declared the extinction of the greater dragon species kind. It's not a species. There's many species. I just saying that because I label them all as greater dragons in order for ease. In 1783 BHW is the founding of something called the Arendonian Empire on Alphabetcha. This, empire is profound as it would rule for 200 years. or sorry, not 200. That's not a long time in this setting. 1,500. I don't even know how I messed that up. It would rule for that many years. And it would control a vast portion of a continent, almost 18,000 square miles. Though that is based on older math, so I'm not really sure. I'd have to, do the math again. And, yeah. Though in 217 BHW, an event called the Year of Fire happened. In this year, the Arendonian Empire collapsed as hundreds upon hundreds of rebellions all arose at the same time, which would eventually, over the next 70 years, would lead to the almost uh, you know setup of the modern setting. Countries, Arendon beforehand, the Empire ruled from southern Zaroma and Nexterland all the way to Yeheral and bits of Gwalaxcoatl and Ferenoki. Now they were reduced to even less than what they are in the modern day. Sorry for the map. I'm trying to make a better one. I'm currently in the process of making a better one. And then it wouldn't be until the 8th of Spokana in 1 PHW that the Great Hacked War would begun. It happened started very late in the year, and it would only begin when a nation, an entity known as the Hacked Imperium began posing themselves as the benefactors, and they would begin manipulating the local population into, listening to them. And this war would, progress and progress, and 13 years later, the aspect of volcanoes would awaken. He is the last greater dragon. Obviously, we'll get into this in further installments, and later on I'll explain aspects next, and a few other things. On the 19th of Skyseep, 15 PHW, the Great Hacked War would end. Obviously, I skipped over 15 years of history. I've skipped over a lot more, before that, but this it would only be the year before that, in 14 PHW, when most countries would switch from the standard dating system of before and after the Great Southern Crusade, at least in Alfbecha, from that dating system to the Hacked War dating system, because all but one, actually experienced the war, and that one, definitely felt the consequences. Then in 24 PHW, the Knights of Infinity, one of the many nations associated with Alfbecha, though technically they were not officially a part of it. There's something called a rogue island in the map you see before you. On the left side, there's a small collection of islands that is actually way too close than they're supposed to be. They're way further in actuality. That's just a, rough approximation. I just wanted them to be able to fit on the map. And they discover the island of Agaide and the ERA. The next decade, in 34 PHW, the island of Agaide would be attacked and annexed by the Empire of Vertalia, officially reconnecting the aspect of strategy, who was the Emperor of Vertalia, to the Overseer, which caused events that haven't really been written yet. 3 years later, there is going to be a war during that time period. I just, not a lot has been planned out for that period. It kind of stops at 34, just with them arriving and conquering. Then in 37 PHW, the second age of exploration begins with the creation of the Knights airship Aspect class 05, also known as the Strexstren. I should have made that name easier to pronounce. That's my own fault. I never read it out loud. The Knights of Infinity operate a fleet of airships, and that is the fifth of the largest class. It is named after the aspect of justice. I'd have to check, but I'm pretty sure that's correct. And then 100 years later, in 166 PHW, the effects of the Dark Age of Magic are largely undone thanks to the Empire of Vertalia. Now, obviously, a lot of history isn't written down. Some of these are just mostly worldwide events or just important events to the world. I will have more written eventually. This is just my first installment for what I have written down. There's 32,000 words total, so. Then there's the worlds, quote unquote. The main one is Viridian, which is the world where Vivventia, all known life is. It's where all the things I've described so far is from. It's where the story takes place. And then there is Zenthara, which is the world the dead go to. Is some assume it's the world where your dead body goes. Sorry. Though some might assume that it's possibly connected to the veil, which we'll get into in a second. I just gotta do one more. Obviously, unless otherwise, your body gets taken to another realm via magic or the divine. The kind of magic that does that, a tiny tad itty bitty bit illegal in most places. Then there's the heavenly realm, which is where the overseer, this, not you don't know that. This world has one deity. You may be confused by earlier statements about a deity named Lorine, but we'll get to that eventually. The overseer is the sole deity of Vivventia. This is his favorite of trillions of worlds. He is an ancient being at minimum more than 250 trillion years old, and this is his favorite. And also there are his aspects, which are mortals, usually, that have been uplifted to what might as well be deities if it wasn't for the fact that he is just kind of better. He's kind of their boss. And then lastly, as previously mentioned, there's the veil, where magic comes from. Now, souls also come from the veil. But it's kind of iffy. We're not really sure. Some people also assume that, souls go back to the veil when a person dies, though that's entirely unproven. Then the planet, where most of this story the entirety of the story takes place of, is called Vivventia. Upon it are many, many continents, islands, nations, and realms, Helvetia being one of, if not the largest, upon it. And then in Vivventia, I guess on Vivventia, there are patches of land, across the planet called Rogue Islands. These are islands that don't seem to be connected to any major continents and that don't really, show signs of anything else that could have formed them. Most just assume the Overseer placed them there. That's not a thing he's unknown to do. Okay, and then the magic, I'm going to explain magic real quick, comes from a separate plane called the Veil, which acts as a person's soul and life essence. Some individuals can suppress the Veil, weakening or stop. This does not, suppress the soul of people, but it does suppress magic, or at least it can weaken magic at the very least. Some people are immune to the effects of these people who can suppress it. They're called Reapers. due to a side effect of being, near them, especially which is strengthened, especially when you're a magic user. This effect is worse than when you can cast spells. Um, the uh, no matter who you are, unless you're immune, um, you can feel when you're near a Reaper within 2 to 15 yards, depending on how strong the Reaper is. You will feel like your very life essence is being suppressed. It's being trying like you're trying something's trying to bottle up your flame to remove all its oxygen. These symptoms typically are exhibited by shortness of breath, shallow breathing, migraines, your stamina weakening, and weakened stamina and a feeling of weakness in the legs. Though most of this, actually all of this is a very temporary effect. Will dissipate pretty much immediately the moment the Reaper gets far enough away. God. Uh, let's see. Where was I? At a pause for a second. In the Vale, there are regions where people go if they devote their lives to something, right? Like, say you were a smith, and you devoted your life to that, and it was your life's work, and you loved it. Upon entering the Vale, and that's when your soul enters the Vale, or Zenthara. It's not really known. I just by that I mean I just haven't decided yet. Um, you will appear, in an area that's, perfectly tailored to you and and like your passion, your love. It could be magic, the arts, blacksmithing, anything, anything. It could be a lifestyle, just something you're interested in, a career, or just a group, like a group of people that you were, dedicated to. And you can spend your eternal afterlife amongst others who also dedicate themselves to that thing, or you can just not. You can spend that afterlife with family. You can spend it with. You can move in between afterlives in this state. It is said that when you're it's like it's said that like those who are devoted their lives to farming, you'll appear if you wish in a when you awaken as your shadow in the veil. You will appear on a massive farm where you can either continue to work or just sit back and watch the eternal harvest. Um, these like I said, shadows, because can, these people, once they're in here, appear as shadows. And while they can interact with the objects, quote unquote, in that space, um, these are typically just simple shapes that appear kind of what their, you know, Viridian counterpart is. Um, they're not really, all that like complex. You don't need to eat or anything in here. You're dead. Um, we're gonna skip the last paragraph here for just a quick second, and we'll return to it once I explain aspects. But first, we're going to go to species and races. Um, we're going to start with the native species first, which starts with the various greater dragon species, of which all but one singular member is extinct. From them came Dragonborn, which are, just reptile people. They're draconic people. And from them came Turtles, which are turtle people. It's just a subspecies. Crocings, which are crocodile people. And Kobolds, which are just the draconic answer to the goblin. Um, the other native species is the Genasi species, which include fire genasi, earth genasi, air genasi, and water genasi, all of which being typically sentient or sentient and sapient collections of that specific element. Usually they appear separate from whatever element. If for example, water, if one is to fall into water, they're not going to immediately, be spread out amongst that water. They're going to stay together, as their form is going to try and stay together. The air genasi, you can actually see them. They're not just invisible. They're like condensed, quote unquote, air. And then there's tieflings, which happens when usually fire genasi breed with usually dragonborn. Now, obviously, any type of genasi mixing with any other species, I guess it's not obvious, but that happening will causes any kind of tiefling. It really just changes their color and, if they have, or like certain other features. The reason that in this world tieflings usually have horns is because the majority of the tieflings are descendants of Genasi and Dragonborn. Now there's other species, races that arose, that were created for Alphbetia, but they were not, there originally. At least they weren't there yet, so we're not going to cover them yet. The next species to arrive were humans, and they split into Goliaths and Halflings. Halflings were just the human answer to the goblin, um, and they created goblins and gnomes. I should be saying gnomes too. I forgot to mention gnomes. Um, uh, Halflings became dwarves after moving into the mountains, and the Goliaths became ogres after moving into forests, and giants after spreading into well, the the other areas. I haven't decided yet. I'll figure it out eventually. This is a work in progress world, obviously. And then the next species who arrived were greater elves. They are now all dead, except for literally one guy. I think he's still alive. I'm pretty sure he's canonically still alive. They split into sun elves, moon elves, fire elves, which are also now extinct, wood elves, desert elves or orcs, and sea elves. Um, Sun elves split into gnomes, and those became deep gnomes after moving into the mountains, much like the halflings becoming the dwarves. And desert elves became goblins, bugbears, and trolls, with goblins becoming hobgoblins. Just them getting bigger again. Okay. The other species to appear after all those, were arrived. The overseer wanted more species, like more diversity, upon this continent. He's like, all right, I need more. So he created Aarakocra, centaurs, changelings, tabaxi, gif, thrycreen. Um, sorry, I should probably be explaining all these. Aarakocra, bird people. Centaurs, you know what a centaur is. It's a half horse, half person. Changelings, people that can shapeshift. Tabaxi, cat people. Like literal cat people, not neckos. Cat people. Got something in my eye. Oops. GIF are. I might have to look this up because I do not remember. I'm pretty sure they're hippo people. Yeah, they are. Thrycreen are arthropoids, which are just bug people. And now we're gonna reach the part where I don't remember what all of these are. So you're going to have to, hold on a second while I can pause the recording. I just remembered that. Oops. Apologies. I'm gonna leave literally everything into this first video, and then I'm gonna actually edit for. All right. Back to continuing the races again. I have to pause. This is, very chaotic, very unprofessional. The next races are the Harengon, which are bunnies. They're a rabbit race. Then there's the Frogan, which are a frog people race. There's Gerbeans, which are like gerbils or chinchillas, kind of. Um, well, yeah. And then there's just scaled up. As you know, they're about the same size. Um, I had to think about it for a second. I was thinking of a character that can shapeshift. Um, then there's Vulpin, which are fox people. Servon, which are deer people. Ratatosk, squirrels. Bear folk. I wonder what bear folk are. I'm kidding, that's rude. Bear folk are bear people. There's Arena, or yeah, Arena, which are hedgehog people. Loxodon, there's straight up elephants. Um, Rhinons, which are rhino people, and Locatha, fish. Um, then there's creatures that are, and these are just the non sentient or sapient ones. There's actually no non sentience in here, just non sapience. Oh, there's one. And then there's first off, there's the lesser dragon species. I only have three names so far, which are starlights, which are they get to be about the same size as a cat. And the other two I don't have things for. They're fire wings and broadhorns. I will figure those out later. I'm world building political stuff right now, so that's why a lot of the other things are like bad. Um, then there's great wolves, which are like dire wolves, but even bigger. And wolves themselves are already massive, so imagine how big those things are. And then there's beholders, which are just not very smart in this world. It's just like normal beholders, but stupid. Er. And there's forest kings, which are just the warden from Minecraft, but different slightly. I haven't figured out how. They live in forests, not underground, and don't they don't burrow. They just kind of walk around, and they're just more social, well, with each other, and they don't communicate via sound. No, no, no. And then there's Kaganoas. I have to be completely honest. I don't know what that is. I created that and I just forgot what it is. So I'm probably just going to erase it from the lore. Then there's turtle ducks, which are just the turtle ducks from Avatar: The Last Airbender, because I like that show. This is my world, and you don't get to tell me what to do with it, Mom. And then there's giant bisons, which are also much like Avatar, except they can't fly. And then there's the various species of land sharks, because there's just sharks with legs. Have you ever seen that artwork, like all the sharks, but they're like small and they're like dog sized? It's that image. It's that like set of images, but like just actual. Um, and then there's water dogs, which are dogs made of water. Yeah. The reason I give in the lore for why some of these things are like so similar to things from other worlds is that the overseer, this world's god, he likes to travel the multiverse, even worlds that he didn't create, right? He'll go to these worlds and he's like, oh, I like that, and he'll just take it and put it in his other worlds because he's like, that's cool. He just like me, for real, for real. Then we're going to go to the aspects, so I can explain what an aspect is. Because I've been saying it this whole time. You guys don't know what it is. Worst, like, video ever. There are an unknown number of aspects of the Overseer. They are called aspects of the Overseer because they are the Overseers. Get this? Aspects. Um, uh, there are, they are his deputies, his frontline men, his secretaries. He's their boss. Yeah. There's somewhere in the 180s, like not even the overseer. Well, he knows, but like he's somewhere in the 180s, somewhere like there. Um, though some countries thinks there's 62. One major church thinks there's 62. One thinks there's 74. The Church of the Overseer and the Knights of Infinity have 183. and the Church of the Overlord in Moruk says there's 6. They're a little behind. Yeah. Aspects are Catholic saints, but more epic and cooler because some of them are cool. No, I'm joking. Yeah, the aspects do the things the overseer doesn't want to or cannot do, and whenever he leaves to go to other worlds, they do his job for him. Uh, there are aspects for magic. He makes like all the rules for magic and stuff. That's the thing I skipped in the magic section. Um, uh, he has to go whenever a new spell is created. He has to review it manually. The problem is there are spells from before the Dark Age of Magic. In the modern, like in the early tens, like from 1 to 10 PHW, he is still going through some spells from before the Dark Age of Magic, so like 2,100 to 2,100 years before. And then there's aspect of love, um, who is not just Cupid. Her whole thing is, uh, punishing those who manipulate love. There's the aspect of war and the aspect of peace. They've been married for 7,000 years. Um, there's like the aspect of industry. Um, the aspect of Vivventia is something called an aspect species, which are just species where they only have a member or all of their members are aspects if they have more than one. Um, there's only a couple species like that. Like the aspect of Vivventia is just something called a world serpent, which is just a really big serpent that happens to be an aspect of the overseer, and it can grow and shrink in size whenever it wants. Um, then there's the aspect of strategy, who is Sonarin, Emperor Vertalia. Uh, the That story is going to be a little bit silly whenever I actually get around to writing it. Then there's the aspect of anger and serenity, um, who is just this poor orc. Sorry, desert elf. I have problems with remembering my own name, so I'm trying to get better. Who was normal, and then the overseer, while drunk, because he himself and some of his other god friends uh, used their combined powers to make an alcohol so strong even they could get drunk because they're stressed a lot. So they created a drink that they could get drunk on, and when he was drunk, he was like, I should make an aspect of anger and also peace, like inner peace. And so he looked at this desert elf. It's just like, you seem like you're going to be a good choice for this, and he gave them, well, bipolar disorder, like really cartoony, over exaggerated, unrealistic bipolar disorder, where it's like a switch between either incredibly angry or at peace because of like the nature of their powers. Then there's the aspect of the Knights of Infinity. No one really knows what he is. They know it's a dude, probably, and he's before they knew. Most people knew about the aspect of uh, before they knew what the Knights of Infinity were. They just called him the Overseer's Executioner because he didn't talk to you unless he was about to kill you. And he's also known by several other really epic, super cool titles. I almost just said a brain rot word. Like, the Marshal of Eternity, or the Herald of Finality. There's things like the aspect of music, sustenance, justice, who's the yeah, it's the one. Then there's the aspect of volcanoes, which is the last greater dragon, specifically from a species called Tarask. Um, the ocean. Then there's the aspect of the ocean, who's something called uh, who's an aspect species. Um, specifically called greater leviathans, and then the aspect of the sky is also a thing called an aspect species. Is also from an aspect species called the Crensis. Is and yeah, that's going to be the end of episode. I'm gonna say 0 because that was awful, and I'm not gonna actually edit it. And blah. Thank you for listening, if you were, and have a great night.